Good morning, everyone. Sorry to keep you guys waiting, but we have got started. Welcome to Intersekt 2022. Embedded finance has been the hot topic for a very long time, with an estimated market value of $138 billion. Embedded technology is not a new concept. It's been around for a while, and in Australia, we've got a number of companies playing in this segment. So today I'd like to introduce the panel. Ariel Timothy, Chief Strategy Officer from Ariza. Ariza is a provider of end-to-end mission-critical automation software to business customers in regulated industries. I'm sure Ariel will tell you how it all works. Next, we have Zoe from Open Insurance. I'll let Zoe tell you about all of the fancy things that they've been doing in the industry with some big names. Last but not least, we've got Jacob Parker, who's the founder of Fiscal and Open Finance Platform. Let me throw it to Ariel first. Tell us a little bit about the company.
Hi all. So Ariza is a provider of Ariza is a provider of end-to-end software for the credit and debt life cycle. So we do everything from loan origination through to loan administration, hardship recoveries, then into insolvency and creditor services. So we look to service each step of the way with different software solution, primarily focusing on integration of things like open banking data, different data sets, such as even insolvency payment records, bureau data and also accounting data as well when you're getting into the SME space. So ultimately what we're looking at doing through our software platforms is delivering automation and systemization into segments and verticals that are be largely paper driven and to create more efficient outcomes.
Thank you. Zoe.
Hi guys. So I'm from Open Insurance. Our mission is to provide the best insurance experiences at the best price for the world. Our focus is working with our partners, and Nabi mentioned we've been fortunate enough to work with some great partners like Bupa and AHM, who are white label partners, other partners like Telstra, who choose to use our Huddle brand, which is our proprietary direct-to-market brand as well. We don't just offer, though, the technology for the innovative experience. It's also the customer support and teams for the go-to-market, for the customer service, and also the end-to-end life cycle that those policy holders, who we claim to be our customers, whether it be our partners or our direct, we're very much focused on the outcomes for them. Sorry, Jacob. I know you can. We are also in 3 regions, so we're in Australia, New Zealand, and the UK, and we're excited to hear more about how we can work with our partners.
And we're an open finance API platform that's for banks, fintechs, and other platforms. Our product is really a plug-and-play developer API, and it provides programmatic access to financial accounts. So predominantly under open banking, being able to access the user's banking data. Where we really come in under embedded finance is really as a tool to enable embedders or other platforms to leverage more external data sets on their customers.
Thank you. I love talking about platform ecosystems and financial services sector's value chain, and embedded finance or embedded technology can serve across that value chain. So that's one aspect of it, whether it's customer journey or whether it is back office efficiencies or something that will save the company millions of dollars. But what I would love to talk a little bit more is how that goes into the market and integrating into the ecosystem. What are the possibilities from your perspective, Ariel?
So I think firstly, when you're considering that ecosystem, it's considering that there's a lot of modules that you've got within that space. So if you look at each embedded finance option, it's a module that you're going to deliver through a digital experience. So the products themselves have to be the value add of that process. So what I see, and particularly we see through the UK, is what's that next step in the process. So for example, embedded finance is often a very transactional process, whether it's facilitating a purchase, whether it's a loan origination piece, but what happens beyond that? So an example of something that we're seeing in the UK is when we're going through and potentially going through a loan application, what happens in a decline? or does the journey finish at that point? What other value adds can be done within that process? So in that space, we've started to see added benefits like benefit checkers, things like that to assess income, whether we're looking at tax refunds as well, to about sort of creating income opportunities off the same data, all consent driven. But it's about how to actually build beyond what the initial use case with consent, but taking it further than the original, just one-dimensional, here's a transactional outcome.
Is it transferable across jurisdictions, being a UK company coming to Australia?
Yes, yeah, it is. Consent-based is really what that relies upon as well, is because if you've got consent from a consumer to use the data in that manner, and you're open and you're honest and you're upfront about what you're looking to do, and you're adding that value, then consumers do consent to it. And that's our experience again as well, is providing the right information up front and providing what benefits can be driven or what value can be added by that process gets that consent as well.
Excellent. Zoe, Open has done some incredible things in the Australian market and is in New Zealand and in UK. What are some of the challenges that you have faced in implementing these solutions and working with big companies and big brands? I would love for you to dive in and give us a little bit of an insight about how it all works.
Sounds good. So I think one of the things, kind of picking up on your points there, Ariel, it is very much around that experience and around how you actually facilitate that for the customer. So again, be it the partner or our direct, I think looking at the opportunity that stands before us, as you mentioned, Abby, like it's a tenfold industry in terms of the revenue potential from 2020 to 2025. You know, it's a focus. It's something that multiple sectors should be looking at in terms of how they're going to partner to enable this for their organisations and for their businesses and for their customers as well. What does that look like? What does that mean? How can we use first-party data to better that experience? How do we streamline and optimise so that it makes sense for the customer, so that when they're being presented information or offers, that it makes sense, that they understand what they're being offered? And I think to that extent, we also need to ensure there's the right amount of friction. So it's always that balance. You want it to be fast, you want it to be easy, and partners want things delivered fast and, you know, in a streamlined fashion. But we also need to make sure that customers are actually very aware of what they're purchasing for insurance context, when they're covered and when they're not, when they're going about their lives, you know, understanding that this is something that I'm actually covered for when it comes to insurance. So what does that mean to me? What do I need to look for? And empowering that choice, which I think, you know, be it a financial service in direct banking or whether it be in insurance, is something that we're about. We're about the open mentality, but also as the open business, ensuring that customers are able to access the information that makes their choices more informed.
Thank you. Jacob, I want to talk a little bit about your solution and how it interacts. So with Open Solution, it's very much thinking about the customer journey, and you've got a white label solution and then also your own brand, right? So there's certain limitations around what the customization of it. And then Jacob, with the solution that you guys offer, you don't directly interact with the customer?
Yeah, so we also offer white labeled access to open banking. But I think fundamentally pulling in the data provides a variety of possibilities. I kind of think of embedded finance as a spectrum, and it's not really binary. You could have probably the lowest level, you could have a button where someone initiates a payment, and that's sort of an embedded journey. But as it goes deeper, you can start leveraging both your commercial data sets that you currently have, as well as external data sets, and open banking is a good use case for that. And leveraging that, you can now start to provide more services using open banking. One particularly that I like, and I think it's a quite strong embedded experience, is if there was an accounting platform and I could pull in someone's open banking data, and at the same time I could see their receivables that are coming through. There's a call to action at that point where that vendor might want to receive a working capital loan, and that's quite a short-term duration loan, and they could do that constantly throughout the year at many different times where it might make sense from a cash flow perspective. So I think for us, it's really, we work with embedders and then also other platforms just to pull that data, and how can you use that data to extend the service as well. Even in the embedded journey, I think you can hyper-personalize more of that. So instead of picking the age between 25 to 30, you could start to fine-grain that and offer more personalised offering.
Yeah, I might just add to that quickly as well, because that's actually a growth area we're seeing as well in that SME space, which is exactly that use of of open banking data, is to facilitate building out the profile of an SME client and then using it as a trigger for cash flow finance. Like it's one of our platforms actually does that. So.
Zoe, I want to go a little bit deeper with your solution, because it's an end-to-end solution that you guys have created, and you work with Telstra. Is a big company, right? So it's one thing to design an amazing, beautiful product from a technology perspective. It's a whole different ball game to implement it and take it to market. Would love for you to share, because you've got Bupa, you've got Telstra, the process that was involved in from getting in contact to taking that product to market, and all of the stuff that we do not see behind the scenes and what it took.
Absolutely. So I'm not sure if you can all see, but everyone in this front row that is in white jumpers basically make this happen. So we've kind of got a mix here of product and our marketing team, as well as our partnerships and our engineering team. And I think that, it is very much, it is an end-to-end journey from actually putting together the proposition that goes to market, again, via our partners or direct, and working with our partners. Because I think, to your point, Nabi, yes, they are incredibly large organisations that have a lot of governance and structure and are fundamentally good at what they do. But that doesn't necessarily directly translate, at least in an initial period, to being good at selling general insurance or the particular offer that we're presenting through this embedded experience. So how do we lean in and use their base, their infrastructure, whether it be marketing or other, to actually enable that customer understanding of why this particular brand is now offering general insurance? What does that mean? What does it mean for the business? What does it mean in terms of the actual service that they'll experience throughout that purchase and life cycle? So I think, like, in terms of Bupa, it's a great example. We went live with them earlier this year. It was 10 weeks in terms of the actual development through to go live. And that was a whirlwind of a lot of 24 hours, let's put it that way. And there's no chance that was something that was an easy undertaking, and it's something that we would necessarily have the same size opportunity to target something like that again in terms of that time frame. But we have an incredible team, and I think, it speaks a lot to the culture of both organisations when you can find that mix of partnership that actually brings about that drive, determination to bring that customer outcome. We were very fortunate that Bupa were very committed to bringing a different experience to their customer base. We were fortunate enough to win the tender against larger insurers. And I think that for us, the reason that we were communicated as for the decision was around that enabling of that creative, innovative, fast-moving experience. So even in the last period, we've had 6 releases, for example, since we went live, to enhance those pieces. As we learn, we continue to improve and release again, so that we're bettering that experience and really listening to the customer base, given that majority of them are actually health customers that are translating now into general insurance.
One of the most difficult, pieces of the embedded flow I see is just the customer journey, and maybe people in the room seeing embedded finance, and how do you execute that customer journey? How do you guys, looking at Bupa and then Telstra, look at maybe tweaking those flows or how executing, because they're quite different use cases in some cases? Yeah,
it's a really interesting question. And if you want to meet Rahman, our engineering and product experience general manager, he'll be out by the coffee. We've got an open coffee cart. But just in general, you're totally right. And I think that for us, it's working with that partner. We are very fortunate to have live data that we're accessing from day one. So we get a sense of who's actually approaching, who's looking, who's dropping out, when they're returning, those types of experiences. So I think that that's one component once you're live. But in terms of actually developing the solution, it's very much understanding why the customer would want this particular product, what their targets are. Is it actually retention? Is it new business? Is it another revenue stream? Is it actually an opportunity to deliver something differently to make their platform actually more attractive, because that drives retention? So there's a series of reasons why partners would want to work with a general insurer, or whether it be someone that is providing them an additional add-on service. Supplementary service is it's a massive space for opportunity. So I think it's about understanding what you can offer, how you can offer it, and then working very closely with the marketing and other teams to understand the customer base so that you can best serve that experience.
Yeah, in financial services, in a heavily regulated space, creating products like this is not easy, right? Because we have to partner with a whole range of players and stakeholders, from regulators to the incumbents, and with open banking, CDR, open insurance being, a little bit far away from becoming a reality, as a company and its product teams, even if you can do something technologically, there might be hindrances around, regulation and compliance that would not allow you to do it. So how do you determine when to execute on what in terms of getting traction in the market? And I know timing is a really critical factor for success, and globally we're seeing a lot of traction in embedded technology. How do you guys think about, designing new products in the space and looking at what's happening with other stakeholders?
So we're largely driven by our clientele. So we number anywhere from banks to non-bank lenders into insolvency practitioners. So we're driven by gap analysis of what's happening within their systems and where we can bridge those gaps. But fundamentally, what we end up doing is working with the regulator. In each jurisdiction that we operate in, we end up having a relationship with the regulator, and we test in their environment and with their engagement. Excuse me. I checked this about 5 times.
You actually did.
I literally checked that 5 times before I hopped on stage, and it's still wrong. But we end up working with the regulator to determine what fits and how that interacts with the law. And so in the UK, for example, we're regulated by the FCA. In Australia, with our platform, we've got a corporate insolvency platform here. We work with the regulator. In the personal space, AFSA, and we work with the ASIC in the corporate space as well, to integrate with them and liaise with them about different things. And we also work with the ATO, because we also do integration around single touch payroll and items like that as well. So we're governed partly by what that regulation is and how the regulators interpret it, and then what our clients need to fill those gaps.
Excellent. I'd like to throw a curveball at the panel around embedded technology, and what is happening in Web3 and blockchain is a big topic at the moment. So when designing products, you can choose to pick a technology to find or create a solution, and both in insurance or banking or lending, there are different ways or different times that we can choose that technology. Where are your companies in terms of adopting blockchain as part of embedded finance or embedded finance solution? Is this something on your radar? Is this something that you guys are working on? What are your thoughts?
I think there's a fascinating element to being able to tap into whether there's deep liquidity pools in DeFi, or kind of being able to disrupt the back end side of financial services. For us, we're really focused on the open banking side, and I do see in the short to medium term a lot more innovation in embedded finance around the use of data. I don't think the run-up of embedded finance has even really started yet. I think it's more product innovation rather than leveraging external data sets. But I do agree with you. I do think there's some interesting kind of external areas for improving operational efficiencies.
Zoe, thoughts on that?
I feel like this is probably one we could throw back at you. Look, I think it's an interesting space. It's definitely something that we are keen to keep our eye on, and to continue to challenge ourselves as business and professionals that are passionate about the way that we deliver products and services, to keep thinking about new and different ways that we can offer that. For us, it's not likely going to be a key focus in the next kind of quarter, and that's how we like to look forward based on the types of partnerships that we work with. But again, it is something interesting, and looking forward to potentially hearing some more about it at a round table soon.
Excellent. There are a number of solutions from Cover Hero's perspective that we have worked on before in the Web3 space and blockchain. Just a lot of R&D work around what's the use case, right? And there are a number of factors around scalability. Does it make financial sense to build it on this particular technology? And does it really solve a problem? And if the problem can be solved without that particular technology, then obviously, we have chosen different paths in the past. But financial inclusion that is created by, access to data from the incumbents is huge. Where do you see the industry in 5 to 10 years with the rate of development that's happening from a legal perspective, from the regulators' perspective, incumbents, and their technology providers and startups? Where do you see our industry in about 10 years?
Look, that's a good question. Look, I think there has to be an evolution into how, I guess, traditionally bank products are propagated out through different fintechs, because right now there's we've got payment opportunities, we've got the beginnings of open banking data, we've got these sort of engagements, but there's not a lot, and we've got wallets and things like that. But traditional banking services are still held quite tightly. So when we're talking to actual account management, virtual accounts, for example, is quite hard to access for a fintech without building a wallet-style solution. So when you've got to create a virtual account solution in front of a trust account, for example, because of regulatory requirements, that's quite difficult for a fintech. So I think the evolution is really more about some core banking products getting more accessible to fintech. So in 10 years' time, that's where I'd like to see things, is where a fintech can come in and offer those type of solutions because they're more nimble, they've got the ability to adapt, and from a financial inclusion, that's how you start to do that, is to make credit more accessible, financial services more accessible. And we do see this in some other markets, for example, even just close to home in Indonesia, where you've got that non-bank sector, and fintechs are really leading the way in that inclusive area, particularly around the micro to SME space.
Zoe?
I think it definitely is something that we focus on. As I mentioned before, we're not just open by name accidentally. It's something that we consider in terms of how we can actually enable customers to have access to their data. I think it generates some question too in terms of how does that change the competitive landscape. So once people can actually switch more easily, will we see higher rates of churn? I mean, they're relatively low across the nation at the moment. So what opportunity does that present? And I think for us, it's twofold. One is that we could potentially see more uptake because it's easier to move away from the incumbents. It's easier to be more interested in those other products that sit outside of the core four. But I think also it's important that our customers are enabled to make transitions to whoever they want to be serviced by, and that process is as easy as possible, and when they want to access their data, that they can. So over the next 12 months, our focus and priority is actually enabling customers to be able to retrieve all of the data that we actually pertain to their records. And that's just part of, I guess, making sure that we're being true to who we are as a business and the values that we want to uphold and that we think that are important when we're both looking at what the customer offering is and who we work with.
Excellent. Jacob?
10 years is tough, but I think in 5 to 10 years, Australia's in a unique position with open finance, moving to open insurance and more data sets coming along that. I think with regards to embedded technologies, increasingly we'll see moving from white label UI solutions to actually being embedded in the flow and kind of having this dynamic relationship with the customer. And I hope to see open finance when the full flesh rolled out, and finance is happening in the background. I don't think it needs to be in the foreground.
Excellent, thank you very much. I'd like to see Web 2, Web 3 coming together and being able to embed products inside a virtual reality or an augmented reality environment and, interact with products in that kind of space in the next 5 to 10 years and across, various different channels where financial services products are not distributed, and then how we navigate through a complex regulatory landscape, right? That brings us to the end of the first panel. Thank you very much, panelists, and thank you for your attention.
Thank you.